come a little closer and lend me your ears. Don't worry, you keep yours while I keep mine.
In each episode, we'll dig into the major stories, uncover the truth, and retrieve gems from Yada's blog.
We'll discuss what's right, bark about what's wrong, wag our tails at the thrill of discovery, and take you on adventures through the exciting world we live in today.
So, fasten your curiosity leash and get ready.
Right then, coming to you with another episode of the Yada's Vlog on a Blog. Tomorrow's news, disseminated today. Let's dive in.
All right. Well, we're welcome, Kevin, to the vlog on the blog. I don't know what episode we are on this, but we've been doing it pretty regularly now. I was always told that there's no way you're going to train me to do a regular broadcast again after all of those years of shattering myths where, there is a time slot and you better be ready for your time slot, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. But, here we're not too far off. We would have been earlier today, but we're waiting to hope that Will gets his connection and he can join us. But we were talking about family business and the background for about 15 minutes before this program. Oh, you can see we do have the Wookiee. He is back on his perch. He is so much happier that he's not down on the credenza or the side table here. So there is our Wook. Oh, look, you can do the whole thing. Oh, he's seeing himself
on camera.
He is. The Wook's not so sure of himself. Well, we're going to go through the blog, which is the purpose of the blog on the blog, as we're prompted to do so. This first is a picture of a rabbi who is claiming that via Kabbalah, which really is an extension of the book of Ezekiel. It's kind of where it all comes forth from. And as we know, Ezekiel happens to be Satan's playbook. It contains 25 ways to kill a Jew and 2 disgusting rape scenes. And the end of the book is all how Satan can cover over all of Judea, all of the Jerusalem, all of the Temple Mount, and build this monstrosity in conjunction with the Coppercon, who is Donald Trump, and have the naming rights of his new digs. And so it's just a revolting book. And Kabbalah, you can see I've got
can hear it on the mic. He's setting a good
fan.
beat.
Yeah, it's a fan here. So, yeah, what are we going to do? No, he says, I'm working it, Mom. That Leia has walked in, and no, it's Wookiee says, no, I'm working it. I'm working it. You don't need to take me. I'm doing my job. Oh, well, there. I guess Wookiee's gonna leave the building. Okay, so they are claiming that they have this special now divine presence, and that if they meditate on their prayers, which is something God never asked us to do, God's not interested in what we have to say to him. May surprise a lot of people, but it's just true. God has no interest whatsoever in listening people jabber to him. It's his job to speak and ours to listen. And it takes a lot of listening before you're in a position where you're going to tell God something, A, that he doesn't know, or B, should consider. And, I've been doing this nonstop every waking moment now for 25 years. And it isn't very often that I open my mouth and say, okay, God, we got a mess here. How are we going to resolve this one? And,
Right.
and I'm not giving advice. I'm just saying, all right, I'm going to need some help here. But that's about the extent of it. And then I shut up and listen.
Mhm.
And I spend all day listening by reading his testimony and then commenting on it and sharing insights that can be derived from it. These buffoons, no. They want to pray. They want to tell their God something. They even turned the listen, Yisrael, Yahweh is our God. Yahweh is one. They turn that into a God-forsaken prayer. How do you do that? I mean, you just got to be obnoxious to do that. And they even removed Yahweh's name, which was the entire purpose of the statement. Let's talk about how just revolting these guys are. And they're not just ugly looking with their weasel hats. They're hideous on the inside. This is the a malignancy, a tragic cancer for Jews in Israel. What they're claiming now is that because of Hasidic Judaism, which was invented in the Ukraine in the 17th century, that they are inviting the divine presence inside of themselves. Well, if you were doing that, then it would be the Spirit of Yahweh. And if you had his authorization to have the Spirit of Yahweh, he would be writing about you.
Mhm.
But he has nothing positive to say about any rabbi. And if you were doing that, you wouldn't be overwriting his words with your Talmud or your Zohar, would you? And if you were doing that, you wouldn't contradict everything that he has to say, which they do. So this piece of crap here that is trying to look like he's a holy man is demon possessed. You invite a spirit in and you're religious, that spirit is of Satan, period. Weasel hat and all.
Yeah, if you invite it in, you're gonna get something. There's no doubt about it. And
you're going to get something. That's how you get demon possessed. You invite a spirit in while you're being religious or political. That spirit all the time is going to be the same kind of spirit that Paul and Muhammad admitted possessed them.
Yeah, I read a little bit about this Devuk Kut or whatever. It is 100% Ukrainian. Okay, this ideology comes out of this sense of hopelessness that Yehud or Jews had in Ukraine. You know, where Baal Shem Tov started his little shtick, right? I mean, they were oppressed. It was a hopeless situation for them. And so they're starting to look anywhere they can. And when they start turning over rocks, you find some nasty things sometimes. And
you do.
I would not be a proponent of this Devuk, you know?
No, I would stay as far as away from a rabbi as you possibly can, and from Judaism, as well as from Christianity and Islam and Marxism and all of those things. They're all going to lead you away from God and from any chance of ever having a relationship with him. But there are very few people that are as belligerently obnoxious and lost as are the Hasidic rabbis.
Yeah. Shame.
It is a shame. So, this is Thomas Friedman. He is a man very, very full of himself. He is very seldom right. He is, if not the most famous, certainly in the top 2 or 3 most famous columnists for the New York Times. He is also an anti-Semite, and he is Jewish. So, it's quite an introduction. He's not stupid. He's just terribly and tragically misguided. Now, in this particular case, he is saying that it's crow, Mr. Trump, not lobster. And what he is trying to say is that the consequence of his blunder into Iran is that while he will call his deal lobster, it's crow that he's going to have to eat. And he's going to have to eat a lot of crow, and it's going to be served up raw and cold. But I said, he's supposed to, a man that's supposed to be able to turn a phrase. So if you're going to pair something with crow, it's not lobster, it's crow versus quail. And if you're going to deal with steak, as he goes on to write, he talks about it being filet, but it's shit versus steak. Let's make the alliteration work.
Right. Crow versus quail. That is much better. And this guy went to J school. He's been doing this his entire life, and yet
he can't even turn a phrase.
Right.
All right. So this is something that is triply interesting, actually. Todd Blanche is why people dislike attorneys. He's a consigliere. He's the kind of advisor that the mob would have. And sometimes because the acting is so damn good, I'll watch a quick clip because it's served up on one of my feeds, and I'll watch a quick clip from the Godfather, and it is just because the acting is is just stunning. You can just appreciate a craft when it's done well. And I think when you understand the nature of criminal enterprises, you have a better understanding of Islam, of politics, of the Trump administration, and of Christianity. It's all a criminal enterprise. And when the mobsters in those scenes, the Godfathers, they will all say, I don't need any more tough guys. What I need is more attorneys. He's that kind of attorney. And he was the guy that was most responsible after Bondi, who had the job before him, of keeping Trump out of litigation and the many cases that were being brought against him, and of course, unscathed by the Epstein connection. That's his background. That's his claim to fame. His law firm worked very hard to work against the interests of the United States and in favor of that POS sitting there in the corner of that shot. To make him acting attorney general is like having the Godfather be president of the United States, and he choose the lawyer that's most responsible for running the mafia into the White House. That's what you have here. Now, he made a statement that I have been saying now for 2 years. If it weren't for MAGA Christians bringing Trump into the White House, and based upon, there he is. Hi, Will.
Hey, guys.
Good to see you. Yeah, I know you've had trouble getting in. We'll just finish this thought that we can chat. But if it wasn't for MAGA Christians voting for the most vile human who has ever lived, Donald Trump, and Elon Musk spending $300 million in the last weeks of the election in the swing states, creating a false impression about that piece of shit in the upper right-hand corner, he would be in jail today. Literally, right. He'd be in jail today. He had to win the presidency to stay out of jail.
Correct.
He was losing every case, and the cases that were coming up next, that Florida, or not Florida, but the Georgia case on trying to change the election results, where he is recorded demanding that somebody find votes for him. Yeah. And then the case where he had stolen top secret files and took them down and exposed them in a resort, his resort in Florida. And then his explicit encouragement of that riot that took place on Capitol Hill on January 6th. No one had survived the court in Washington, D.C. on January 6th.
Right.
And no one could survive the Florida case. And he was dead on the Georgia case. He'd have been in jail. Yep. And so he announced, if he hadn't won the presidency and those cases were sidelined by the Supreme Court while he was president, he would be in jail. And the most recent thing that he has done, not only in all of the bribes that he has been involved in, and now his most recent stunt, which is to cut a deal with the IRS where he cannot be investigated, he can't be audited, he can't be indicted, he can't be arrested, which is how a crime syndicate is always caught, is through the IRS. To eliminate that as part of a deal, oh my God. I mean, we're not talking about he is impeached and convicted. We're talking about he goes to prison.
Yeah, Leavenworth.
And so what he did is he went to Congress and said, okay. That idea on the Trump's idea of the $1,776,000,000 to arm the belligerents of January 6th, a bad idea. We won't do that. But they want the rest of that IRS settlement to stand. He just doesn't want it to be investigated. So he's trying to throw the Senate a carrot here, a cookie, and say, all right, we won't start the fund just let the rest of it roll.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to get by with that. I think they're going to dig right into it, and they're going to find all sorts of fraud. Well, you know he's going to find fraud, and they're really in trouble. And so Trump has the U.S. government now paying the bills of his private attorneys.
Mhm.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unreal. Hi, Will.
Hey guys,
I
I was having a little bit of a I was having a little bit of a Wi-Fi issue here. I think it was a signal strength issue, Kevin. That's what the
Okay.
diagnostic said. So
Okay,
sorry
well,
about that. Didn't mean to be disruptive.
no, that's all right. So we're finished with our fur. We had the Hasidic rabbi. We're accusing him of being demon possessed, and I think it's a very defendable position. And we're accusing Trump of having the government pay for his personal attorneys to defraud the nation.
And Yada should be writing for the New York Times.
And there's
Oh
there-
yeah,
right.
we also had Thomas Friedman not being able to turn a phrase. He should be
Yeah.
better than that.
Yeah, I saw that.
All right, so this is, I think it's the Economist. It's a large periodical that is saying that Israel's fight with Hezbollah is complicating America's talks with Iran. No, you're missing the end. You know, you've got this huge story there with intrigue and complexities and interconnections and complications for the future. And you're posting something as, oh boy, I'm really smart. Boy, I'm going to tell them that Israel's fight with Hezbollah, which you can't even spell, is complicating America's talks with Iran. And you're missing something that is profoundly important, which is this is the rise of Persia. Persia is coming back.
Right.
The Persians and Iran have deliberately set a wedge between the United States and Israel that also allows them to do what they most want to do, which is to not send atomic bombs into Israel and therefore destroy it. They want Jews dead, but they want to claim it. And the only way to do that is with jihadists. And the jihadists of Hezbollah and the jihadists of Hamas and the jihadists of the Islamic Jihad and a couple of million jihadists from Iran can do all of that with proper cover, particularly if Israel is not able to interfere with any of it, which they wouldn't be able to in Iran, in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Gaza, or in the West Bank. And so what most people thought was just a throwaway line. You know, they wanted to give an olive branch to their accomplices in Hezbollah and Hamas so that Israel stop bombing them. Had nothing to do with that. Had it all to do with setting themselves up for Alaska 2.0 and the ability to invade Israel under the cover of drones, such that Israel is rendered indefensible because Israel hasn't a clue how to deal with jihadists on foot.
Yeah. Mass
No clue.
numbers crossing their border. Yeah.
Yeah, none. So what they missed here is this isn't complicating the issues between America's talks with Iran, because there are no American talks with Iran. And this is not an area of complication. The complication is that America was so foolish in attacking Iran that it has nothing but horrible options. It's surrender is all America has. You know, Trump has come out with a post that we'll talk about in a future one here that he lists all of the things that he is demanding from Iran. You're not going to get any of them.
Yeah.
And so there's no complicating America's talks with Iran. There are no talks with Iran. America will either accept Iranians' dictates or the war will continue.
Isn't that unbelievable that we're in that position now, that literally Iran is dictating the pace and the flow of the negotiations, and we see Trump in this sort of reactive position, just confabulating away. I mean, it's really profound when you look at it. I can't believe that the tables have turned and what an amateur this guy really is. I mean, you talk about checkmate. I mean, the U.S. is really cornered in this. There's just nowhere to go. He
There's nowhere
started
to go.
something and he can't stop it now. Now it's gonna pick up momentum like a freight train, right? So
Yeah, there is no stopping it. And even slowing it down is devastating for the United States and the world because the Strait of Hormuz stays closed while they slow it down, and Iran rearms itself both defensively and offensively during the slowdown. So, and America's military assets bob up and down without significant resupply or without the troops being rested, and you all those forward troops that he deployed, like he was going to invade those islands. What are you going to do with them? You know that all of the disruption to their lives and the money to put them there, and now you've got to bring them all back. It's and you know this pretend blockade that is a showcase of stupidity. The longer it goes on, the worse it is for the United States, for the petrodollar, for world economies, for world food production, for the U.S. military, who is already out of most of its necessary assets to deploy. And it gives Iran every advantage. So, you know, you got to wonder what in the world you're going to do, because you can't act again. You can't attack Iran again without Iran completely destroying Israel and all of the Arab fiefdoms surrounding them. So you can't attack again, and you can't back away.
Yeah,
and so your only option is to surrender to them, give them everything they want, and that's, you know, such an infinitely inferior position to where the U.S. and the world was prior to this attack.
That's right.
It's more than crow. You know, you're eating the whole flock, feathers and all, served up raw.
The story for me is Iran's redemption arc here. I mean, Iran was able to take on the most powerful military in the world, okay, the United States, head to head, take every blow that they could give with Israel, okay, and they were able to build a war machine to do that, okay, a defense machine to do that, and to be able to attack back while under sanctions, while under, you know, constant sanctions from the UN for they developed nuclear weapons while under that. Just think when the surrender happens, all this goes away. The UN will no longer be sanctioning them. They're going to have an economy that is full.
They're the hegemon of the region. Israel wanted to be the hegemon of the region, and America wanted to be the hegemon of the world. America lost its status of hegemon of the world, and Israel lost any hope of being hegemon of the region, and Iran emerged along with China and Russia. So it was utter and complete disaster. And the thing that is so interesting about it is that because we're students of the Torah, and because we study, we alerted everyone to how big a disaster this was going to be before it began, and specifically said each of the things that you're trying to achieve, you're going to make worse. You're not going to get regime change. You're going to solidify the regime, is what I told them. And that's what happened. Yeah. You're not going to eliminate the nuclear threat. You're going to cause it to become far more real and come to fruition by this. You aren't going to destroy Iran because you can't invade the nation, and it's way too big, too populous. So you have no chance of defeating them militarily, which means you're going to squander your military and your reputation in doing so. And you're going to exacerbate your biggest challenge, which is the loss of your economic credibility, because you're going to push Iran further into the embrace of China and Russia and the whole world against America for this stupidity. So everything that turned bad about this, we forecast before it happened, and then explained that it was happening when it was happening. And now we're saying it can't be resolved. As I said, there was no way out of this mess if Israel and the United States caused it again, and they did.
Yeah.
And so here's, a periodical, supposedly of journalists supposed to be smart people, and they missed the entire thing.
Mm.
How are you going to understand the mess that you're in if you don't understand who's doing what to whom and why?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's blame the Jews all over again. It's those dastardly Jews bombing Hezbollah that's keeping America from winning the Iran war, right? Or from having peace.
Another thing, Yada, before we hop off that, with
Yeah.
the Strait of Hormuz, I read an analyst. He had a interesting idea about this. He said, the thing to really watch is when that strait opens, what is that oil going to be denominated in? Because even while all this is going on, apparently it's denominated in US dollars, not yuan. However, that could be the sea change where there's a flip of a switch to another currency, and that would bring to fruition what we talked about, the loss of the reserve currency status. So usually it doesn't happen quickly, but yeah. But
Well,
let's see what that oil is denominated in.
90% of Iran's oil exports are to China, and that is delineated in yuan. And Iran's going to have control of the straits no matter what deal is cut. And they're going to have a different fee, a different process for those tankers that purchased oil in dollars versus the yuan.
Yeah.
And you've also got the issue of Qatar, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia all knowing that petrodollar arrangement where they committed to sell everything in dollars, and the U.S. provide cover for their fiefdoms, for their personal control over their own countries, that turned out to be useless.
Mm-hmm.
And they also know that the yuan now is a gold-backed currency.
That's right.
And so they're far better off accepting the yuan over dollars, because the dollar is not only devalued by the fact that quantitative easing is used to fund the budget now, but because there are no takers for U.S. bonds now, the only way to fund the growing deficit, which will be in the range of $4 trillion additional each year, plus the $4 trillion that renews each year, that $8 trillion, the only way to fund it is to inflate the monetary supply, which has the direct effect of devaluing the dollars. So it's in all of those oil fiefdoms' interest not to accept dollars. So it's devastating every which way. And it is so devastating, you just have to wonder how it's possible that America could elect and continue to empower a administration this incapable of rational thought.
Yeah, the U.S. is no longer able to protect the UAE or Qatar or
Kuwait or Saudi Arabia.
Kuwait or Saudi Arabia. We've proven that we can't even protect our own stupid bases, quite frankly.
No, we couldn't. We lost them. Lost them all.
So it is a very tempting time to not just switch reserve currency, because we're not what we once were. But like to your point, China and they've been doing this over years. They've been increasing their gold supply, their gold reserves, so that they could be a credible alternative to the dollar. They had liquidity concerns prior. I don't know where they stand with that, but you can just see that whole Middle East picture. It's just changing. The protection racket is over. We cannot protect you anymore, and we're not the best dollar in town.
It was the Godfather's protection racket. It was a criminal enterprise that we established with the oil fiefdoms, those dictatorships, those private estates with flags. It might as well be mafia heads of state.
Yes.
And we funded them while they were trying to fund our annihilation. It was a deal with the devil. And that deal with the devil is done.
Yeah,
it's over.
So
it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Well, not interesting. We know how it's going to play out. That the only thing that's interesting is that China is actually the catalyst that is slow playing it, rather than America's enemy in this case. China wants to slow play America's demise. because they're on such an upswing right now, and things are going so well for China, militarily, economically, shipbuilding in terms of their merchant fleet, their energy and independence, their relationships with the world, that Belt and Road Initiative for alternative supply lines, and that really brilliant strategy they came up with the rest of the world, which is that we'll fund your infrastructure. We'll build your airports. We'll build your ports. We'll build your railroads. We have the technological wherewithal to do all of these things, and we'll develop your mines and your energy extraction, and we'll do all of that. And if you pay us back on a reasonable interest on these notes, then we have done it all, and you have paid us for it, and it's yours. And if you can't pay us, which is, by the way, likely, then it's ours. It was brilliant. I mean, you can't lose under that circumstance. And they weren't judging the other people's governance. It says, you can govern yourself any way you want to, but this is our deal, regardless of administration. You pay for it, and it's yours. So you don't pay for it, it's ours. But either way, you have mines and railroads and energy extraction facilities and electrical distribution grids. You've got all of it that we're going to build in your country. So China doesn't want America to fall apart, because part of what they're doing requires a world that still is economically viable. And America cratering is devastating for China because of what it does to Europe and South America and other places.
China would prefer to manage our decline.
Slow.
If we fall apart, they're going to be in deep trouble.
They know that we are going to fall apart. They know we're going to fall apart. They know we're going to default.
Yeah.
They would just like to slow our default. Say that that America crashes over 5 years rather than this coming year.
Yes.
That's their goal. Yeah. So this FF says, how can we have a perfect world? Well, my comment, first of all, is that the moment you talk about perfect, you're being religious, because it's a fantasy concept, and all religions are fantasies. God himself isn't perfect.
Right.
No animal, no human has ever been or will ever be perfect. You can't say something that is perfectly accurate. There's nuances in everything. So what God wants and what we should strive for is to be right, and then to stay the course, to show that we can complete whatever mission has been assigned to us, or that we strive to achieve on behalf of the Almighty. And if we were all perfect, it would be exceedingly boring. If the earth was perfect, there'd be nothing for us to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I can tell you, we can make the world infinitely superior, better, if you got rid of rabbis like this and all religion, which God's going to do.
Yeah.
So you want to improve things? That's a great move. Start by getting rid of all religious people and all religious institutions, and follow that by getting rid of all political people and political institutions and militant and militaries and militant individuals and conspirators and anti-Semites. That'll be a great place to start.
Yeah.
But you being gone, Rabbi, will make the world better.
Yeah, the formula is simple. Walk away first. That's what Yah said to Abraham. Walk away, and then we can talk. But
walk away and we'll talk.
There's nothing to talk about if you don't walk away. Conversation ends quick.
Yeah, if the world was perfect, the second that you do anything in that perfect world, by definition, it's changed and it becomes imperfect. So
yeah, I don't think there's really any talking between Abraham and Yahweh.
Oh, no.
Yahweh said, I want you to walk away from Babel. And when you do, then, I'll lead you to a promised land. And when Abraham decided that he wanted to say something, like, for example, I think that my kid from Damascus, who's like a son to me, even though I'm not related to him, let him be the heir. And God says, hell no.
Right.
Next subject. Or when he wanted Ishmael to be the heir, and God said, no. Wasn't any discussion on it. Just no.
Right.
So you can say, oh, well, there was that real discussion when Abraham said, what if there's X number of happy people in Sodom? Would you spare the place? Yeah, okay. Well, what if there's, half of that? Okay. Well, what if there's half and half of that? Okay. Well, what if there's one? Okay. Took you a while, but that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go get the one, pull him out of Sodom, and then we're going to.
Yeah, and he's your nephew, and he ain't worth anything. He is really a horrible human being, but he's your nephew, so I'm going to go get him.
Right.
Okay, so Netanyahu is asking Herzog, the president of Israel, for a pardon. Now, do you know why he is asking Herzog for a pardon at this time? Why is he doing so?
It was all Trump's idea.
That's correct. Trump called and read him the riot act, cursed him out. And Trump says, I told Herzog to pardon you. And Trump believes that whatever he tells anybody, they'll do. So he says, you just need to ask Herzog for a pardon. He'll give you a pardon. That's why he's asking for it. And for him to beg for a pardon, it's just eating that man up alive.
Yeah.
His ego is, you can just see, it's like he's, okay, I was told by the teacher I had to go ask for a pardon, so here I am. But God, I hate this. But the fact of the matter is, for Israel to try, even convict Netanyahu over champagne and cigars is insane. It just says you've got no morality in Israel. You've got no legal system that's worth a damn. You've got no sense of propriety. This man is exceedingly evil. He is the devil's apprentice. He has destroyed Israel. He has, it wasn't everything that Trump said about him that was wrong. And he says, the world hates you. The entire world hates you. That's correct. The world does. And it's largely because of the stupid stuff he's done. Yeah. His response to 10/7, the day of 10/7, of him not resigning when he was complicit in that mess, of him continuing to postpone investigations regarding it, of his terrible response where all he did is make the bad situation worse. No matter how you look at it, he was wrong. His destruction of Gaza was hideous, destroying Israel's standing in the world. His first and then second attacks on Iran, stupid. His claims for regime change, stupid. His constant bellowing that next week Iran's going to have a bomb, and he's been bellowing that for 20 years. The world's sick of him.
Tired of it. Yeah.
Just sick of him. And he is a disaster for Israel. And if you're an Israeli and you because you're right wing and this is your guy, just like you're a MAGA in the United States and he is your guy because you don't like the other guy, shame on you, because you are now foisting someone who is destroying you. Just as the MAGA are in America, just as the Likud and the religious parties are in Israel. This man is death to you.
No.
I love Israel. I despise him because of what he's doing to you. I despise also the MAGA, the Marxist left and the Haredim on the religious right. Israel is a mess right now. But you don't want to convict him for cigars and champagne. He needs to
all
be
the things you could, of all the things you could try him for. It's trite. It's just striking how Israel just doesn't see its problem. It thinks Hashem is with them and he's going to be there in the end. And
Messiah's coming. Yeah.
The Messiah's coming, and they're just rallying around their star flag. It's
Oh
just
yeah,
so
we're going to be the hegemon
great.
of the region. There's going to be a greater Israel.
Sure
The
you
Arab
are.
Muslims are going to love us. We're going to have Abraham Accords with one and all. It's just as if they think that their poop doesn't stink.
Yeah, they're misreading the whole thing.
Yeah, and they right now are hated by the entire world. There's never been a country that is as universally hated as is Israel. And a lot of it is based on conspiratorial lies, but Israel has played into those conspiratorial lies. It's why, I blame the rabbis for so much of what's happened to Israel after all. I mean, they conceived Christianity and they conceived Islam. So they are guilty of creating their own enemy, but then they have fed into the stereotypes that those enemies have used to badger them. So Israel is its own worst enemy.
Some things never change.
This is interesting. I don't know if you can actually play it so that you can see what happens. But if you can play it, we don't need to have the sound. But the video would just show the picture. This is Kiev. It is what happened in Kiev last night. This is the second night of bombardment like this. But I'm here to tell you that because Zelensky and the UK and Berlin and Paris, probably Washington, came up with the idea that it would be a grand fund to send drones into St. Petersburg. I keep on wanting to call it Leningrad because I was there. I mean, I've spent so much time there when it was Leningrad, and I've gone back since it's been St. Petersburg. But Putin is conducting an exceedingly important economic conference for Russia and the world in St. Petersburg now, and the belligerents in Europe and Ukraine had been threatening that they were going to send massive drone strikes into it. And during that conference, they did. And they hit. And they did massive destruction. And so what doesn't happen in the world anymore, and I think it's because people have been so dumbed down and they're so racked with politics and religion that they can't think anymore. But there is always a consequence of every move. And while somebody may say, well, they're attacking us, we have every right to bring the fight to them. And you might, it's like Netanyahu saying, they came out of Gaza to attack us. We can go into Gaza to get them. You have to understand the consequence of each action you make, and you have to determine whether that action is worth that consequence.
Even if you are justified.
Right. Even if you are justified. Being hated by the entire world, being isolated by the world, being forced to forfeit your heart in a Fakistanian state is not worth the retribution they got on the Muslims who perpetrated 10/7. It was not worth that. And this attack might make the Ukrainians feel marvelous that we took it to Putin and Russia. But the consequence is going to be grievous. And now we're at a crossroads because they did this thing at a time that the Russians had already decided they're going to hugely increase the destruction of Kiev and told the world to leave because this is what we're going to do. And now you embarrass Russia by not only killing children at a school and deliberately bombing them with a European made drone with optics on the school, shooting rockets as you were watching children burn. And you do that, and then you follow it up with this attack on St. Petersburg. Now, Russia is no longer in the position where they can delay. a response against Europe and the destruction of Ukraine.
How long, Yada, do you think it's going to be before Moscow literally launches a conventional weapon at Western, probably Germany, but it could be the UK? I mean,
Could be any. It could be any of the Baltic countries as well.
It'll be a Baltic first. Yeah.
I would say that Putin has been playing a strategy that had the chance of prevailing, which is that Merz, Starmer, and Macron are so unpopular in the low 10 to 20% approval ratings that with parliamentary systems, there was no chance they would be reelected. And the AfD in Germany is rising now in popularity, and they want Germany first. They want cheap Russian oil, and they don't want their sons and daughters going off to die fighting Ruskies. And there's no one wants to fight and die for the UK with all of its pro-Islamic and anti-British platitudes. So his strategy was to protect the Russian ethnic regions, Crimea and through the eastern part of Donbass and the eastern part of Ukraine, and protect them. But go slow and wait for within 2 years Europe becoming a far friendlier place. And that's what he was trying to do. Decent strategy.
Yeah.
Europe's not giving him that option.
No.
They took it away. And so now his only choice really is, he has three choices, I think, and only three. First is to completely destroy Kyiv. Completely destroy it.
Yeah.
Because he can't send in troops. Because he would lose too many troops. So he can't march in troops. He has to destroy it. He has to make life so hellish that they surrender. So that's option one. Option two is you use conventional weapons and you back Europe off by setting examples and picking 4 or 5 targets in Europe where they're manufacturing these weapons, and you bomb them. And you run the risk of them uniting around NATO and being even more belligerent against Russia. But so that's the consequence. And you have ended the long play wait game, but it's already over anyway. That's the second option. The third option is to say, we don't have enough missiles and drones to use to dissuade Europe conventionally, or even to bring Kiev down. Because you look at these last 2 nights, okay, it's lots of little fires and buildings crushed, but it's boo-boos. And that is just to say, we have them. We've been pushed into a corner. It's time to use them. And Russia goes directly to tactical nukes. Those are the three options.
Yeah.
And if they take option one and it doesn't dissuade Europe, they have to go to option two. And if option two does not dissuade Europe, they have to go to option three. So I'm telling you that all three options are there, and they will continue to up the ante until such time as there are no more options. But that's the plan. Now, timing wise, I think for Kiev, Putin's a survivalist. He's a strategist. He has near 80% approval ratings in Russia. But if he doesn't take Kiev out now and take Odessa as well, he doesn't have to destroy Odessa. He just needs to take Odessa, but destroy Kyiv. If he doesn't do it, his own party will assassinate him. They'll take him out because the fervor of the Russians is not anti-war; it's pro-war. So that's our situation. So if I were to say, give you time, I would say that Putin is so methodical, almost disappointingly methodical, that I think that what we're looking at here is that he'll stick to Kyiv for the next month or so. And I will tell you, though, that what happened in St. Petersburg today is going to change his calculus.
Yeah, I think the European response, I think that he could probably get away with popping a few shots in manufacturing in Poland and the Baltics. If he hits anything in one of the big boys in France, in Germany, and Belgium, okay, that those Marxists will lose their mind and they will just nuke. They will just nuke.
I'm not sure they can just nuke, because while France does have their own nukes, and there are allegedly some in the UK, for the most part, the nukes are American, and America is not going to nuke Russia.
Right.
It's just not going to do it. So now you're dealing with them, and they are so antiquated that I'm not sure they could pull it off. And should they do so before the first one of those nukes hits Russian soil, there'd be nothing left of France and the UK. I mean, people need to have an appreciation for the fact that the UK, France, and Germany no longer have militaries.
Right.
The UK can't float a ship.
No.
The French have nothing. Germany has nothing. They're spending money, but their economy is busted. There's nobody in Europe that wants to go fight a war except these leaders. They don't have a military, and Russia has 4 million men in uniform. They're well armed, they're well led, they're experienced, and their manufacturing base is geared to support them. Russia doesn't want to do this. It's a lose-lose game for everybody. But Russia proved in the last World War that you could send 4 million Germans after them, and they would sacrifice 25 million Russians to save them from them. And at this point now, the ratios are exactly the opposite, and even more extreme than that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what Europe is thinking, because they have no chance whatsoever to prevail in this.
Their their entire rhetoric is, we're going to go to war with Russia in 2030, right? That's all.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is in their rhetoric.
Russia,
you're right.
And Russia says
to a person,
guys,
all of them.
why?
Yeah.
We
Ursula,
just want to sell you cheap gas.
Every one of them. In fact, France just pirated the 5th Russian tanker. Pirated. Took it. Piracy on the open seas. That was the 5th one. That's France. Now, why Russia doesn't respond? It beats me. I do not understand. And the only thing that I can think of at all as to why Russia doesn't respond, I think there can only be one answer. And that is that because of the sanctions on Russia, the only way Russia survives right now is to continue to have good relationships with China, because China is buying their oil. China is their protector, is their big brother at this point. And Xi doesn't want Europe and America destroyed.
Right.
So that could be the only restraint there is.
Yeah.
And Putin is not going to do something because he gets mad without consultation. He's not that kind of guy. So it's not like America decided they're going to attack Iran or invade Venezuela, now blockade Cuba without talking to anybody, just because Trump's got it as an egomaniac. That's not the nature of Putin or the Russian mentality.
Yeah, spies rely on backup plans. They don't rely on just improvisation and gut moves.
Yeah.
They just.
Have you ever listened to a Putin news conference?
Yeah.
As a question, have you guys ever listened to a Putin news conference?
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, they're in Russian, but yeah.
Right. They're very, very, very long. They go on for 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours. Putin sits there with nothing but with a 2x2 note paper and a pen. And he has ears so that whatever somebody is saying in a language that is not familiar to him, and he probably speaks many different languages, but he has it translated for him. And what he does is, as a person asks questions, because typically it's a compound question and they make many statements before they actually ask a question, he writes down notes. And then the person stops and he says, okay, I'm going to respond to your first point. And he'll go and give a whole history. And then now I'm going to respond to your second point. And now I'm going to respond to your third point. And he's always on point. He knows the history. He knows the consequence of all of this. He knows who the players are and what has happened previously when they tried this kind of ploy. He is so well informed, so focused, so disciplined in his rhetoric. He is at a level that is beyond every other head of state in the world, way, way beyond. So sometimes because of the way that the U.S. media in particular likes to dumb down enemies, and Putin goon, no, he's a brilliant man, and you need to understand that. Like when America decided they were going to go get regime change because they thought they'd be just stupid jihadists in Iran. No, they're Persians. They're smart. They're very well educated. As a matter of fact, the people that are negotiating on behalf of Iran are so much better educated than are the Americans. It's a joke. Mm-hmm. All right. So this is something that I've been talking about for a long time. We're constantly hearing from the left that there are many people who are bailing from MAGA against Trump. Just not true. Mm. What they don't recognize is two things. Trump lost a long time ago the swing vote. So in all of those states that he won because of the swing vote, that 20% that's neither a Republican or a Democrat, because of Elon Musk money and the fact that people aren't all that bright, but mostly because the Democrats are Marxists, and most Americans aren't Marxists, particularly American men. We're just not Marxists. We don't buy into Marxism, and the Democrats want to run Marxist candidates, and men in the middle don't like that. You're just not going to get a man that has worked for a living to vote for a woman who has never worked for a living, who's a Marxist, who knows nothing about business or your economy. If they run AOC, you wait and see. It's the exact same thing. Yeah. So they can't. It's not that the Democrats have picked up that middle vote. They haven't. So right now it's 38 to 40% to 38 to 40%. And the middle, the undecided, are on neither side. They despise both sides now. Yeah, and stay home. Trump is not losing appeal. He's exactly where he was. The 38%, the 40% that are Democrats hate him, and the 40% that were in the middle, certainly 20%, let's call them in the middle, have rejected him.
But what does this say about the 37%?
The 37 to 40% that are MAGA, no amount of evidence or reason is going to influence them. It's why I've said all along, you can never reason. There's no amount of evidence or reason that's ever going to persuade the overtly religious or overtly political or overtly conspiratorial on any subject. They're immune to it. Yeah. So it's never going to change that the Christian MAGAs are going to continue to support Satan. It's not going to change that. So why even bother with your poll? Why make the latest Times CINA found that 37% of all Americans approve of the President Trump's performance? You are an extreme. You're in a Marxist organization. And you came up with 37%. If Fox were running the poll, they would come up with 39%. It hasn't changed. Yeah, it's not going to change. Why don't you understand that, journalist boy?
Yeah. Well, the poll I want to see is how many of because I've been watching a lot of the protests going on in Newark, New Jersey, around the Delaney situation there, the ICE protests and stuff like that. And you have, like you had in Minneapolis, a Republican or a Democratic governor putting a crowd control in the streets. And so, of course, New Jersey, having a Democratic governor, is putting the state police out to crowd control the streets. Okay. And the Marxists that are protesting are losing their minds. And over, their rhetoric is there's no difference. The Democrats are just as fascist as the Republicans are, as the MAGA is. I'm not voting Democrat anymore. I mean, and so the Democrats are going to have to pivot to the Marxists at some point to maintain their base.
No. The Democrat Party is, at its leadership level, is extreme left progressive. The Democrat Party at the grassroots level among voters is Marxist. The party itself is much more liberal than are the leaders of the party. And so the leaders of the party who are Marxists are somewhat fringe, but they are the ones who are positioned to run for office because the primaries are decided by the rank and file, and the rank and file of the Democrat Party is Marxist. And so that's why an AOC or Bernie Sanders can win the primaries and be put up against the other party, is because the rank and file of the Democrat Party is Marxist. And you can't solve that because the management of the party, the leadership of the party, can't go more mainstream because they will lose their primaries. That's what happened in New York with the governor's race. You cannot go mainstream because in a primary, you'll lose. And if you lose the primary, there's no way you can win the national election. So this is one of the problems that America has with Trump, is that the alternative to Trump is Marxist, and it doesn't fly outside of the. I mean, it's mostly women. It's got to be frank about this. It's mostly women, and it's mostly young people who have been indoctrinated and who have never witnessed, like this kid here. He has never witnessed, much less done what I've done, to go into a communist country before the enterprise zones in China and to spend considerable time there with the leadership, and then go back and develop enterprise zones there and see the transformation, or to spend enormous amounts of time in the Iron Curtain back in the heyday of the Soviet Union, or to travel all the way through the Soviet Union with a KGB agent. Here's a look or two. This is something they will never experience. It's probably an IMCEL. I wasn't. And because of that, they don't know the difference between East and West Berlin, East and West Germany, North and South Korea. They don't know how devastating Marxism is when it's applied. Yeah. And so they're just covetous. They don't understand why some people are successful and they're not. And they're covetous, and they come up with a conspiracy that if that the people that have money somehow defrauded them, when it's their problem is they have no initiative. They have no economic sense. They have no business sense. So they become dependents, and as dependents, all they can do is steal. And Marxism is stealing from the productive until there's nothing left to steal. So this is our problem, is that you have Marxists on one side and twist and MAGAs on the other in America, and there's not a nickel's worth of sense between all of them. No solution for these things. I know. Might as well just tell people the truth, that none of these things can be fixed. But if you know that they're all broken and that none of them can be fixed, then it should tell you should opt out and come to the only sane answer, who happens to be, that's why we do this.
Right. Yada.com is your escape plan. Yes.
That is your escape plan. That is your insurance policy.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, this is Israel is not just a house divided in Israel where you have 20 to 30% of Israelis that are Marxist. Tel Aviv is their haven, and 20 to 30% that are ultra Orthodox religious, with of that 60% in between, about 2/3 of them are right-wing crazies. And so Israel literally is a house divided, but Israel there are two Israels. One is that little strip of land in the Middle East.
Mhm.
The other is the United States,
Mm-hmm.
particularly the coast, and particularly New York and California more than any other place, Florida. And the Israel of the United States, which has, I'm not trying to say they're controlling America. I'm just saying that there's 40 to 45% of the world's Jewish population lives in the United States, and 40 to 45% of the world's Jewish population lives in Israel. So let's be honest, there are two Israels. And the Israel in the United States is even more disruptive to Israel than the one in Israel. And it is because Jews have been overwhelmingly liberal. They've been the most liberal aspect of the Democrat Party. And it's been less than 10% of Jews in America who have opted for the more conservative approach to government, with 90% being more liberal. And so they've been supporters of the Democrat Party. And yet the Democrat Party now has turned, better than 90% of Democrats now are anti-Israel, anti-Jewish. So they've funded and equipped those that want to destroy them. This is a terrible position they put themselves in. And then everyone wants to complain about the Jewish lobby and Jewish money and American politics. It's pretty well split. AIPAC, which by the way is a tiny little player. I mean, AIPAC is so insignificant in terms of lobbying groups. It's amazing that so much political rhetoric is devoted to it. It wasn't for conspiracies, it'd be laughable. But J Street is the antithesis of AIPAC, and that J Street is a Marxist organization of super liberal Jews, and they will support a Bernie Sanders who wants Israel wiped off the face of the earth, and who happens to be a communist. You can't survive this kind of stupidity. Jews are supposed to be smart people, and yet they continue to slice their own wrists. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, it's the ultra-Orthodox conservative Haredi versus the Marxist in Tel Aviv. It's the same thing in Israel. It is the same thing here.
Yeah, it's a little different in the United States. Reform Judaism is the favored form. Reform Judaism hardly exists in Israel. In Israel, you are either Haredi or you're some version of ultra-Orthodox, but there is no political voice for Reform Judaism in Israel. And in America, it's the dominant form. And you also have to be careful in the Haredi, while they are votes, are not anything else because they don't work. They're parasites. And in Israel, and just votes and as parasites, they have no value in America because America does not work on the parliamentary system. And Israel, they are a force to be reckoned with, even though they are destructive parasites. They are a negative on the country, a blight on the country, a drain on the country. But in the parliamentary system, because they are 20% of the votes and they vote as a unified bloc, as the rabbi tells them to do, and the rabbis are doing it, so they have power in the government. That's how you form coalitions through bribes in the parliamentary system, which I think is one of the worst forms of governance in the world, is the parliamentary system, and it's prevalent throughout Europe and it's in Israel. It's a horrible system, and that gives the Haredi parties clout, even though they are completely unproductive. They're parasites on their own country. In the United States, they just the only ones that have a voice, they have a voice through advertisements and money that they spend, and they're either Reformed or secular Jews and Marxist Jews. Franklin Graham, what a piece of shit you are. The Bible, by the way, God has no book called a Bible. If you're going to use the term Bible, you're an idiot. Bible is based upon Babel. It means to confuse and to confound by intermixing truth and lies. It is the very thing that God was opposed to when he destroyed the Tower of Babel and confused human language to avoid religions like Christianity, at least to delay them. So if you're using Bible, you are part of what God views as destructive.
Problem. Yeah.
He is claiming that it's not silent on abortion. It is silent on abortion. The Torah and prophets and Psalms, of course, are silent on abortion. Because in Yirmiyah, who he wouldn't know as that name, Jeremiah, it says that Yahweh says that I knew you before you were born.
Yeah.
So that, and Franklin Graham's useless cranium, that means that God's opposed to abortion. First of all, the book he's citing from completely and totally destroys his religion. So if you're going to quote from that book as proof of something that you think is religiously important, you may want to be careful, because that book destroys your religion. Everything said in that book destroys Christianity.
Yeah.
And what it actually is saying is God is saying that I play favorites. And the people that I trust, I redeploy. This was not my first go with Yirmiyah. That's what it says. So Yirmiyah, like Dode, may have been given a call very early on. Dode was 8 years old when God said, this is my chosen one, and I know him, and this is my guy. It's because he knew him in a previous life.
Mhm.
The same thing is true with Yirmiyah. That was Yahweh's first go with Yirmiyah.
We
So
just
then the question
haven't.
is-
Right. I was going to say, who is? Yeah. Which one is he?
and I
Who's
knew there was.
Yirmiyah?
I told Rich this morning at breakfast. I said, I've got a post on this, and sure as hell, Kevin's going to say, so who was he in the previous life? I think the answer is actually pretty straightforward. First of all, what you have to know if you're going to make these kind of claims is that souls do not change.
Mhm.
They are who they are. Their aptitudes, their attitudes are all the same. Souls are not divisible, which means the previous deployment must have come to an end before the new deployment can start. And God's not a slave driver. There's usually a reasonable interval between the taking and redeployment. Typically in the range of 50 years, sometimes longer than that, though, sometimes a couple hundred. So you'd have to, first thing you'd want to do is find out when Eliah was called. Or not Eliah, I'm sorry, but now I gave away my answer. But Yirmiyah was called around 630 to 650 BCE. 630 to 650. So who is somebody that was very involved? Because there's no prophet that was more involved in the politics of his day, meeting with the king, than Yirmiyah. First part of Yirmiyah is, don't go and do that deal with the Egyptians. It's going to blow up in your face. It's going to be really bad for everybody. Don't do that deal with the Egyptians. It's going to end up, and he went on and said, these are all the bad things that are going to happen. So he was not just anti-religious, he was anti-political. So do we know another prophet that was anti-religious and anti-political that was far enough away from Yirmiyah that he was available, that God had maybe taken him and could redeploy him?
Will, you want to hit the ball off the tee?
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, 850.
Hmm.
850 BCE. There's 200 years between the two of them.
Mm.
Huh.
Yeah. So
That's
the
fascinating.
answer is that you've got a 0% chance that Yirmiya's first gig was as the boy prophet. God knew him, knew his soul long before he was born. And God had somebody that he worked with, that he liked working with, that he was comfortable working with in a similar circumstance. You know, this was the takeover of essentially Phoenician influence, Phoenician religious influence over Israel. And this time it was Babylonian. And so he brought in his guy, Uzziah.
Right.
So, Mr. Graham, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Yirmiyahu had to stay in the cities this time. He didn't get his walk away time like he had as Elia. So.
Yeah, Elia is definitely an introvert. That is that is true. But you can tell in the writings of Yirmiyahu, he didn't like being public. All these guys were introverts.
Yeah,
all of them. And Mo was an introvert. They were all introverts. Dode was an introvert. They're all introverts. Yeah, it's very, very seldom does God pick an extrovert. Very seldom. And anytime he does, that extrovert is shooting himself in the foot and saying, "Oh my God, I can't wait to become an introvert again."
Yeah.
Trump and Netanyahu may be on the rocks. So, if somebody called you an effing idiot, and somebody says, "What in the F-bomb are you doing?" If somebody says the whole world hates you, would you say the relationship is like not very good?
Strained a little, maybe.
What could you do? You're the president of the United States, and you call the head of another country, and the only head of state of another country that is actually willing to kiss your butt. And you call him an effing idiot, and you ask him what he is effing doing, and then you tell him the whole world effing hates him.
Where you going with all that?
What's next? What are you? What's next? And you tell him, "Oh, by the way, you can't defend your country. Why? Because I said so. Why?
Right.
Because I was told by Iran that they won't sign a deal unless you stop playing in Lebanon. So you can't do it anymore." So, would you say the relationship's on the rocks?
Oh yeah.
And did we predict that?
One betrayal
Yes, sir.
after another. Yeah.
One prophetic trail after another. He betrays Israel. So, you know, this is really sad because Israelis still think that Donald Dumpster is the second coming of Cyrus, and he has a higher approval rating in Israel by some 4 or 5 times than he has the United States. And they don't recognize what their own prophets said in their language, recorded for them, that this is Rahab. He is Satan in the flesh. He is the one who is betraying you. You know, here's your sign. Read the damn thing. You want to claim to be a Zionist? Well, this Zion is a sign posted along the way. Read it. What was the purpose of having prophets if you don't listen to what they had to say? Yeah. And by the way, Netanyahu is an idiot. You know what he has. I mean, he's not an idiot in the sense of he's an intelligent man. He's just doesn't think clearly. He is incapable of thinking strategically. He's incapable of running the scenarios so that he knows the consequence of his actions. But the fact is that Trump is an indiscriminate cannibal. He turns on everybody. Everybody. There is no exceptions. There is no one who has ever been associated with that man that he won't turn on.
That's right.
So it's just Netanyahu today, and it's just Netanyahu happens to be the head of Israel, and we care deeply about Israel, as does God. And so this is a really, really troubling thing. You know, back in the day when I was working for a living and I ran businesses, particularly during the earlier days where I was in marketing and sales with the sales oriented business. I didn't sleep much at night because what I would constantly do, and I was always accused of it because my lips would move when I was doing it, is I would make my presentations, whatever I was going to say, before I would ever get there. And so I'm having this conversation and I'm imagining the person's expressions because I can read expressions. And I actually learned to read upside down too. If they would write something or read something, I could read whatever it was upside down that they were saying while I was talking to them. And I could read expressions. So I knew where things were going. And what I always did was I always had this imaginary conversation with real people and have them bring up the toughest objections. And I always practiced what my retort to those objections were going to be well before the meeting actually transpired. So when they brought up any one of 4 or 5 potential objections, I had the answer that would lead right back to where I thought it was appropriate for this conversation to go. I realized that a good answer delivered in a timely fashion was infinitely better than a perfect answer delivered a day late.
Yes.
Right? You've lost it by that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I always practiced it. I always thought these are the advantages of my competitors. These are the advantages of their products versus the one I'm offering. And these are the concerns that the client may have. And so I always practiced them in my head. So I knew all of the potential scenarios, and I did it enough that I was able to anticipate all of the eventual scenarios and have the answer for those scenarios, and sometimes avoid the challenging question just the way that I presented the information. And I learned a technique that was called the art of emphasis. I couldn't lie. It just wasn't in my nature. So because I couldn't lie, and I was a salesman, you always think that's what the salesman is supposed to do, right? Like the politician, you're supposed to lie. If you're a politician, yeah, the economy is doing great. Everybody loves us. Our military is unstoppable. Yeah, we're winning the war. That's the chairman of the Fed is supposed to say, economy is doing great. No problems. You're supposed to lie. And salesmen are known to lie. I couldn't lie. I just wasn't good at it. It bugged me. And I didn't have a poker face. So I learned a concept called the art of emphasis. And I learned that you need to be very careful how many things you say. If you have 20 points that are beneficial to your cause, 10 of them are a lot better than the next 10. And if you give all 20, the person who is challenging you is never going to respond to the first 10. They're always going to respond to the last 10 where you're most vulnerable, and you're going to spend all your time debating your weakest points.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned there's only so much you want to say. And I learned that you can present almost everything in such a way that you have told the truth, but you've emphasized that which is important to the cause that you're trying to convey.
Yeah.
And so it's a strategy that I just don't think people care about. They don't hone. They're not used to interpersonal relationships, and they and cause and consequence, unintended consequences in particular, is something they've never thought about. And it's another thing. And I think this is really helpful that I had a whole life prior to this life. Is because there's so many life lessons that are crucial to our understanding. And one of the things that I learned is that no deal has any value unless that deal is good for everyone. The deal is either mutually beneficial or it's not worth making. And that if you can negotiate mutually beneficial deals, then you don't even need a lawyer. All you need to do is write down, get a piece of paper, write down the key points of what you've agreed to so that there's no misunderstanding. And you share that with the other party so that both parties know this is what you've agreed to. But you always work not to have a deal that is great for you and bad for them, because then it's bad for everyone. They'll find a way to cheat on it. They will end that deal all the time, 100% of the time. And so you have to learn that the art of the deal is the opposite of what that POS on the right there believes.
Mhm.
You don't bludgeon the other party. You don't dictate to the other party. You learn what the other party needs and wants, and you know what you need and want, and you find a way that you have reciprocity, that everybody prevails. And if you do that, you'll never be in court. I was never sued, ever.
Mm.
All these businesses.
Yeah.
Never. I didn't see the inside of a courtroom until I came here and served as an expert witness for a friend of mine. And it's because first of all, I never lied. And second of all, I never, ever strove to create an unfair deal with anybody. If I shook your hand and we had a deal, I would delineate what we'd agreed to on paper so there was no misunderstanding, and we would both honor that deal, and it was good for everybody. I don't think the world understands that either. That's why I keep on talking about the covenant. It's a deal between God and man, and we both have to participate. And if it is only God giving and man receiving, then it's not a mutually beneficial deal. We have to demonstrate that we have something to offer God, or he has no reason whatsoever to offer us anything.
Yeah.
Got to be mutually beneficial.
Natures of deals that I have found that work best in my life were, first of all, they were non-binding. Okay, there was always an escape clause for everybody involved. There was no, you know what I'm saying? Easy way to get out, completely volitional, but absolutely good for both parties. And that's what Yahweh does. You don't like my covenant? You're free to go anytime. There's no consequence. Right. Your soul just dissipates to nothing. There's no consequence.
Right.
You enjoyed your life. Yeah. Good time. Yeah.
That's why I love Yahweh's divorce. First, I like his marriage and I like his divorce. There's no ceremony for marriage. You're not making any speech. You're not saying till death do us depart, forsaking all others. There's none of this rot.
No.
Nothing like that. There's no commitment to monogamy. None.
Mm-hmm.
There's no commitment to sharing assets. I know women were screaming in the background now, but the fact is, that's the truth. It's not a gravy train. It is not a commitment to monogamy. It's not a commitment to be faithful. It's not a commitment to anything, and it's not a vow before God. And you want a divorce, you don't need an attorney.
Right.
You write a letter. That's it. In fact, when Yahweh said, I don't want to be married to Israel anymore, he wrote him a letter. It's called the Book of Hosea. Why would anybody want to stay with somebody that makes them miserable? Leave. Right. Explain. You don't even have to explain why you want to end the relationship. You just need to say, I want out of the relationship. Now, God says it should be based upon there is something that you have uncovered that you didn't previously know that you really find inappropriate. But it's simply you write a letter. I just think this is the way we ought to be. And in every relationship, you ought to be able, free will, you can come, you can go, ought to be good for women, good for men. I think we're much better together. I've tried when I, had the time between wives, I was a prolific dater. And there was some fun in that, some energy in that, but, ultimately it was a drain. It's just too much work. And so I prefer where we are now. But, I realize we humans are not actually monogamous creatures. We're just not. And so it's better to create relationships that work for people rather than to try to force them into what they're not.
Correct.
And
I don't know how we got to marriage from this, but this
is
by the way, is something that I'm hopeful when we had a a group of women that wanted to create a Daughters of Yah Torah book club, and or Yada Yah book club, and there was a a concern that was expressed, and maybe it was because of the title, the Daughters of Yah, and the only reason for that is that both Leah and I have some pretty good scars from what happened, so we're cautious when somebody says things that resonate with what was so vile in our past, as the group of women claimed to be covenant and then trashed Leah and then myself. You hear some things and you say, oh, boy, I don't want to go down that path again. And they would, the women that were thinking about doing this would have had no reason to know that that's a raw nerve.
Right.
But it is. And you can say, that's kind of a raw nerve, but I love the idea of a Yada Yah book club. And I love the idea of women talking Torah. And I love the idea of women having a show, and whether they want to invite do it on their show or not, that's fine. And I love the idea of trusting people to do their programs their way. Do your branding, do your show your way. But I also know that turning on lights, doing a live stream, having a camera there when you're not used to doing that, talking into a microphone, and going on for an hour or two is not natural for a lot of people.
No.
I've grown up in front of a microphone and in front of lights and on stage, and you just develop an ability to do certain things, and I've put in 25 years of study so that I am those books. I represent those books, so I'm okay at it. But even then, almost every show that we do, you'll notice there's always something that I know is going to spur conversation. That's why I love this vlog on the vlog. We're looking at things that people are trying to promote, and we're typically eviscerating them, but to show the flaws in people's reasoning so that people are more aware of what's happening around them. And the other times I will take a book that I have written, and usually it's books that I'm writing right now, because that's what's most interesting, of course, to me, and where we're cutting edge. And I will share a translation that I've written because I've configured cameras behind teleprompters, so I can read what I have written. And then we can ad lib on it. And, Rich says, my God, sometimes I see him, he's doing a show and the wheels are going off and he's coming up with an insight that no one has ever perceived previously. And that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
And so, my suggestion would be to do the Yada Yah book club, have somebody in the group read a page or a passage, maybe even an insight or two from it, and then everybody talk about it. And then go on to the next one and share what you think that means and how it applies to your life. And when you first learned that, what did you think, or what your concerns are? If you do that, you're never going to be uncomfortable. You always know you're going to have something to say. There's an endless arrangement of material there.
Yep.
It's structured. You're comfortable. You know what you're going to be talking about. It's going to promote discussion among the group. And it will be Daughters of Yah talking about Yahweh and the Torah. It's just in a way that is has a higher likelihood of being comfortable and a highest likelihood of being effective and accurate. And, I don't really care if somebody has a different view. Have at it. You want to have a different approach. That's great. That's why we're doing this. And what you want is to recognize that God wants us all to demonstrate that we're trustworthy. Well, if we don't trust our covenant family, then how are they going to demonstrate that they're trustworthy to Yah? So it's essential that everybody have this opportunity to do this. And they feel comfortable doing it, but you want to set them up to succeed, not fail. And you know that it isn't easy. It's hard. This is not easy. And the very fact that you can become comfortable with it over time and you can overcome the hurdles of doing it is part of the confidence and proof statement that is so essential to the process. But it's mostly, we do need to trust people and we do need to have them be able to do their own branding. I cannot step outside of the branding that Yahweh has prescribed. It's got to be consistent. And everything I say, write, and do has to be part of that branding. You know, it's there over my my shoulder. That is our branding. But that doesn't mean everybody does. You know, Roger Bankston did a show on the Torah. He doesn't need prompting. That is a man that is just
Right.
oozes confidence and is very comfortable in that environment, and you can tell it. And therefore, he does not need prompts. Most people do. I like them. And if Roger Bankston wanted to have the thumbnail for his show, you know, a caricature of himself in a dive hard hat suit, you know, holding up a finger, you know, I'm going to
Right.
laugh myself silly and say, "You go, man. That's
Right.
cool." And so I think that the women ought to be able to design their own thumbnail, and it should be represent them, and they should have fun with it, and we should all just enjoy everybody growing into the role, but also be careful that I don't want people to fail, and I know how hard this actually is. So stack the deck in your favor.
Absolutely.
You know,
And it's
read something from the books. The Yada Yada Book Club is so easy. Read something from the book. Talk about what it means to you.
absolutely, absolutely.
Can't go wrong.
And from the technical side of things, they are two different challenges to overcome. With the first one being, if you want to live stream, StreamYard accounts are free. You click a button, you are live streaming. You know what I'm saying?
correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now you need content. Woohoo. Okay.
Woohoo.
And you're out there, right? Now the other side of that, I want the safety net of recording. Okay, it's fine, but now you have to learn to edit. So
Right.
what if you've got this great recording? It's until the rubber meets the road and you can edit and you can and can use the software. I mean, so there are different hurdles to come from
Yes.
each side of it. You
When
know?
we chose StreamYard, I chose and other people don't have to choose StreamYard. There's like 50 choices here.
Oh, mhm.
And StreamYard is not the dominant choice.
Mhm.
The dominant choice is choices that allow you to edit. They allow you to edit your sound. They allowed you to edit your visuals. They allowed you to cut and paste, to stop and start again, and to broadcast things that were recorded and have been enhanced and edited. I chose not. I chose not for two reasons. The first of those is I recall the enterprise of reading Prophet of Doom so that it would appeal to a broader audience, particularly in the Islamic world, where spoken English is something they were more comfortable with than written English. And I knew it could be broadcast on the internet. So I recorded Prophet of Doom, which is now Goddamn Religion. It's in the range of 8 hours of editing for every 1 hour of recording. That's just audio recording. That's not the far more sophisticated video editing, which is now far more difficult because you have to sync your mouth and your expressions with the words. And so I figured if I do that, the content that we're able to deliver is cut by tenfold. Second is that Yahweh was quite insistent that it's time to talk because you are the books. And what that means, you can turn on a camera, you can turn on the lights, you can open a microphone, and you can talk because you've spent 25 years preparing. You know the material. And once you do that, what you then exude in a live stream is confidence. You can't make this up. You can't do what we're doing unless you know your material. And so I think that confidence is worth a lot. And I think it means something to somebody to say, this is a live stream. And this person's passion is real. It's not faked. It's not contrived. This wasn't something that they said, we're going to create a show and try to influence people for the following reason. No, it's all live. You're invited into our world. We're coming into your home. Thank you for allowing us. So I thought that was a better experience for them. And now if you are a person who's going to turn on the cameras and go with a live stream, Now, there is some experience. We had a learning curve on what cameras to buy. It turns out now these little guys at a couple of $100 or even closer to $100 are better in some respect to the ones I've got cameras that are between the lenses and the cameras and all the gear that supports them are $4,000 and $5,000, and I have a lot of them. And I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars setting all this up. But you don't need that level, but you still got to integrate all of it. You got to have a laptop. You've got to have a screen. You've got to have the camera. You've got to have the right lighting. You have to have the right setting. You have to be able to use StreamYard. And then the hardest part of all is there's not one person in 1,000 that can be the lead speaker in a live stream.
Yeah.
Unless it's very structured for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that you make it structured is you play into your wheelhouse. Someone like Shannon, because he has been with almost everybody that's part of the covenant personally, he can have a co-host and do a show that is strictly, tell me your life story. Tell me how you came here. And he could do 100 of them or 200 of them and be comfortable in all of them because of what he has achieved in his life, who he is, where he's been, and how he's come to know other people in the covenant. He is perfect for that because he's been there and done it.
Mm-hmm.
There are people whose lives have been so filled with challenges they've had to overcome, like a Roger Bankston. I don't think Roger ever puts himself in a position where he can't figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And as a contractor and a deep hard hat diver, there is no situation that he hasn't thought through all the contingencies before he straps it on. Just the kind of guy he is. I'm not going to give Roger Bankston advice as to what he needs to do. He's proven that he can do it. It's just that's in his wheelhouse, right? But we have a whole lot of people that I know. I watch their and read their little comments on the chat and say, "I've got this idea and I want to do this. I'm thinking about that," and they have a tough time getting traction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you think about this? Looking for approval. I mean, how many posts do we have? I've got this idea. What I think about doing that. I don't know if I can do this, and they'll post 100 posts talking to people, getting feedback from people that can't get going.
Right.
Just There's a lot of that. A lot of that out there. Now, if you think that getting going, if you can't get going, then what's going to happen when you turn on a camera and you're live streaming? You know, I watched our Gen Zers, and they turned on the camera, and the first 20 seconds was one person kind of mumbled and one stared into the camera, and then finally somebody says, "Well, I'll step up."
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't want to do that. I mean, you can do that once, and it's cute, but you don't want to do that the second time.
Right.
Okay. And structure is something that we all do well with. God has given us wonderful structural tools to live our lives within, certain parameters that are healthy for us. There's nothing wrong with structure. And so I'd strongly suggest that everybody try a little bit of structure. Think of what you're going to do, have a plan for it, and carry out that plan. But you're going to be a lot better off if you aren't just looking at a camera. Like when we're doing this show, I can't, I do the teleprompter shows. I'm looking at the text that I have translated. You're doing this show, I'm looking at you guys and what's being presented. So I have something to respond to, something to look at, something to trigger communication. They need that.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts on the whole thing is that you ought to be free to brand your show your way. I think you ought to be encouraged to take advantage of the fact that I've got 100,000 hours invested in this and lots of 25,000 pages of translations and books and all these audio shows. You ought to be able to capitalize on some of that and follow an example in the sense that I'm better prepared than anybody in this group to do this kind of work. And yet I don't ever go and say, let's just turn on the camera. I either have translations I'm going to talk about, or I have images we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Always. And it's because that's just how we're more comfortable. It guides our thoughts. Have an outline. You know, if you're using a laptop and you're putting the camera on top of the laptop, then you can put your outline that you want to talk about on your laptop.
Yeah.
In fact, with these little cameras and the software that comes with them, you can turn your laptop almost into a teleprompter where you're able to visualize everybody else in your group and your show, which helps. If you can't visualize somebody, it's really hard to have a conversation with them like we're doing. But you can also have your notes superimposed on that. So there's lots of things that just will make people feel comfortable. And the more comfortable you are, the more confident you're going to be. And the more confident you are, the more effective you're going to be.
Yeah. You have a team of people that are willing to help. And that is the word, help. I'm not doing it for you folks. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
People reach out to me. I will answer questions. I will do it. Do absolutely whatever I can, you know, but I am the type of person that send me content and I can make it something. But until you have content, you know, until you have you sitting in front of a camera, saying words, I can't do that for you, you know?
No, and don't want to. We can tell you
yes.
that that this is a good camera option for you, that this is a good microphone option for you. These are good ear option for you. This is a good format for a show for you. This is a good streaming platform for you. But you have to take the initiative. And somebody, it's one thing for you to say, all right, I'll help you with your first show. But, you know, after that, they've got to have their content, their team, they're ready, their equipment. And there are thousands of free online video presentations on how to use the camera, how to set the lights, how to make the microphone integrated. And, you know, you don't have to have the, you know, XLR connections into the fancy conversion boxes that we use. You don't have to have Shure 7Bs. You don't. And if you do it and you start doing it every day and you fall in love with the process and you're making a real contribution, then, you know, pop for the $700-800 for the Shure 7B and the more for the cables, and then get that Forthright box that you can integrate many microphones into, and you know, get multiple computers so that you're knowing what you're doing when you're streaming it, and buy the panels of lights, and, you know, do all of it. But you don't start there.
Yeah.
And I started there. Now, the reason I started there is I got the big guy saying, this is what I want you to do. And if the big guy says, this is what I want you to do, you don't start at the bottom. You know, he says,
you were awarded a big
really
contract.
I've taken care of you, now take care of my people. He's really good with that line. And so, you know, you don't say, what is the cheapest camera I can buy? No, what's the best camera I can buy? And how many of them should I buy?
Right.
You know, I probably have 30 microphones. And then Rich brought another half a dozen. I probably had 25 cameras, and Rich brought more.
Across
I
3
probably
studios.
have 5 miles of cable, and Rich brought more. You know, I don't know how many computers we have now, but my electric bill has doubled. So I know it's a lot. You know, I mean, not many people has ever owned and operated a teleprompter. We have 3 of them that are operational and actually have a 4th sitting ready to deploy. You know, so it's, you know, but then I'm in a different position. And in the different position, yes, I had success in business, so I have the means, but mostly it's, good God, I don't want to disappoint the big guy. You know, there's a lot riding on this, and it's a very short amount of time to be all in, and then we'll plead for a vacation and you know, special dispensation maybe for some time off for good behavior later, but let's get the job done. And you know, if you know, I've got wall of cupboards here and a wall of cupboards down the next aisle. They're filled with gear, just waiting to be deployed. We got a backup for the backup for the backup. We are here because, well, first of all, it's the best job in the world. But second, to have God say, I'm going to deploy you for this job because I trust you to do the job. And for darn sure, you're going to follow it through, right?
Yeah.
You're going to say, no, I'm going to prove you wrong, God. I'm really a louse. No, you're not going to do that.
Not in you.
No, it's not in me. No, I'm finishing right now the end of what we know about Noach. And I'm finally within 7 or 8 verses of getting to Noach's only spoken lines. Noah doesn't speak until the next line is, and then Noah died. So he has no speaking role. It's very much like Adam. Adam was only one thing that Adam says prior to his departure from the garden, where he wallows all over himself. It takes a long time, and now we found out multiple lives before you actually get a speaking part with Yahweh. So you're well cast prior to that time. But as I'm reading this, I'm challenged now with what I think is one of the most interesting of all. Not most interesting. It's just one of many interesting things to understand. Every passage on the covenant towards the end is that it appears that Yahweh was saying that I'm making my covenant with you and with all flesh, Kol Bashar. So I did a little analysis. What would all flesh mean? Well, there's
animals.
Like 100 sextillion ants. There's even more bugs, including mosquitoes. There's that range of worms.
A lot of souls out
There's
there.
that many individual E. coli bacteria in just one petri dish. All flesh would mean you're going into heaven and it's going to be brother and sister worm. How are you, sir, mosquito? So if you think that God endowed the mosquito and the worm and the bacteria and the fungi, which is a living organism, and I'm not talking about viruses, these are all living organisms, with the capacity to reason their way to God, to determine what the conditions are of the covenant and how to participate in the covenant, and you're going to be sharing a bunk with them in heaven, then I think you're nuts. Ain't going to happen. So then your challenge is, all right, so I cannot translate Kol Bashar as all life forms, all flesh, all animals, because all these things are animals. I'm not talking about plants. Those are all animals. And it's repeated over and over again, like 6 times. And so it's the challenge is, how do I make this work in a way that is sane? That there's a way that why would God repeat it 8 times relative to Noach and his sons? And I'm going to establish, and I'm going to affirm, and I'm going to set up, and I'm going to cut the covenant with your sons, and with Kol Bashar. Kol Bashar is all things to do with the complete mission and the total story that is told by the human herald. Because that's who Noah becomes. He doesn't have much of a speaking role this time, but he does next time and the time after that. And so it's the totality of everything that is conveyed in the complete message of the Bashar, because that's what Noach represents. He represents the Bashar and the role of the Bashar going forward. And so it's, it takes a lot of work to not only come to that conclusion, but then prove the point. And you prove the point by saying, you can go with what everybody else is going with, all flesh, which is a really odd translation, by the way, of Bashar. You can do that. But this is what it means. 10 to the 20th power bugs, 10 to the 30th power worms and other creepy crawlies.
Mm.
10 to the 40th power of bacteria. I don't think so.
Yeah, you don't even have to go to back. I mean, just animals alone, in my mind, is absurd that every animal that ever existed for no apparent reason makes it to Shamaim. You know, I mean, they have
everything
no option.
Except, everything except fungi and bacteria would be considered an animal in the list that I gave, but we're having a real tough time with our video right now, Rich. Everything would be considered animal with the exception of those two. An ant is an animal. A mosquito is an animal. And just in terms of ants, there are 10 billion ants for every person.
Yeah.
No, it's just not reasonable. God's reasonable. Let's do one more on our bulletin board here, or a couple of more, and let's see what we have. Karen Bass. She was the woman who decided she would be not only be out of town, but she couldn't even get back for the wildfires that destroyed so much of Los Angeles County. I mean, just torched it, and largely because of her appointments where diversity trumped ability. And she is just a nitwit. And she has no responsibility, no business management capability, and nothing that she can offer that has any value to anybody other than she's a Marxist woman of color.
Yeah.
And so it's why I say that elections, the democratic system is useless because there's just not enough people of knowledge and substance to cast meaningful
or morality.
votes. Yeah. And so for this woman to be renominated as the Democratic candidate after all that she was exposed to being so useless, and there she is surrounded by all those women and people of color. No, the fact that you're a woman, the fact that you're a Marxist, the fact that you have a skin pigmentation does not make you qualified. Doesn't disqualify you, but it doesn't qualify you. And that's all she's got. She's a nitwit.
Somebody said something about wanting to be judged by the content of their character, but I forget who that was.
Yeah, Martin Luther King. Don't judge me by the tone of my skin, but by the content of my character. And it's sad, and it's just like JFK. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Really profoundly important lines that are so inverted by the very people they were spoken on behalf of.
That's what they do, though.
There, sir?
What works for me?
Babylon B. Once upon a time, when I first got involved in social media, before I left social media, they were really funny. They had wonderful bits on showing how fascism and socialism, for example, is the same beast. They'd have a Marxist go meet Hitler, and they found, they all agree on everything. And it really funny bits, and they were really insightful. Now there's nothing. I mean, here, Trump is shocked to learn that genocidal jihadists often don't negotiate in good faith. Well, the person that doesn't negotiate in good faith is Donald Trump.
Right.
A person that can't be trusted and who does not negotiate, who can't even fathom how to negotiate. The only negotiations that Trump ever has are in his own head, just through confabulation. And so it's not funny if it's not true. And so they've lost their sense of direction and guidance here.
Yeah. How about for the American people, or those of us just on the sidelines? We can't trust Islamists, and we can't trust Rahab. So, surprise, there's no deal in good faith.
This is
right?
the ultimate Satan v. Satan. I mean, Allah was modeled after Satan. And if you disagree, then read Goddamn Religion, because I prove it overwhelmingly that Allah was modeled after Satan. And the prophets of Yahweh prove that Donald Trump is Satan. So it's Satan beating Satan, and in that conflict in the Islamic Middle East. This is the moment that Rahab emerged.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd have won the election because he
I
lost
told
the
my
last
wife.
debate. He actually lost the debate with Cackles badly. Lost the debate with Cackles, so he was going down. And this was the moment that Rahab emerged. This is the rebirth of Satan right here. He, you can look at his eyes, his look, that whole thing. That was the moment that demon possessed Donald Trump managed to rise to position of power and to stay out of jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing it
Yeah.
live when it
It's
happened. And
defiant
I just
there.
I turned to my wife and I was just like, he just won the election.
Yeah.
There
Yes, he
is
did.
no this shot on the TV. This moment is a 30-second soundbite. He just won the election.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that think it was the whole thing was set up and fake, and I'm personally don't know, and I think that we don't have enough information to make that call. But I can, there is circumstantial evidence, like there's a picture of his right ear. Ears are mostly cartilage; they don't regenerate.
Mm.
You take a bullet round through the ear, it's going to leave a notch. I saw fighters. Holyfield, for example, had his ear bit.
That's right.
It doesn't grow back.
No.
You notch the ear, it does not grow back.
Oh.
Mike Tyson's teeth marks on it.
Yeah, Mike Tyson's teeth marks.
That's right.
And so, does it look like it actually occurred here? No, no. So, does it look fake at the event? Yes. But does it matter if it was fake or not? No, because he's Satan. It doesn't matter if he faked his. When you're Satan, does it really matter that you faked your way to the presidency?
No.
What do you expect from Satan? And here, the world is celebrating the fact that Trump cursed at Netanyahu, and he used 4 F-bombs in the conversation. And I constantly tell people that don't use F-bombs. If your go-to verb is an F-bomb, and it's so prolific in social media, good God, it is the go-to verb of choice. If that is your go-to verb, you got nothing to say. You got no argument. You have no intellect. You have no sense of logic or propriety. Don't do that. Don't stoop to that. That should be, as I say, should be a lesson to everyone that what Trump had to say to Netanyahu is inexcusable under any circumstances, much less to heads of state.
Mm.
Yeah, I have been accused of dumbing down my speech sometimes. So it's a matter of knowing when to turn it on and turn it off. There is locker room talk, and then there is kitchen table talk.
I realized, and I'll go ahead and talk on this in a moment, but I realized that men and women have become far more prone to swear than previously. And there are words that I will say that people think are swear words. Shit, for example. I don't have a problem with shit. God doesn't have a problem with shit. He uses it all the time. Damn. I don't have a problem with damn. God uses it all the time. So I think there are some words that are appropriate for us to use. I just never see where it's appropriate to use the F-bomb. In fact, even the origin of it, as to fornicate on the order of the king.
Consent of the king.
Yeah, fornicate and consent of the king. I don't buy it. I don't like it. I don't think it's a verb. I don't think it applies in any situation. I don't think it advances any discussion. And of course, I did all those years of syndicated talk radio where one of those will assure you will never
Right.
be back. And what they did on my shows, I was so disciplined in my language, they took me off of delay unless we had callers. If we had callers, they put the delay back in, so the callers wouldn't say something stupid. But today on the in the internet and social media, it's just all a progression of F-bombs, and I just don't think it's colorful. I don't think it's appropriate. This photo, they're saying, proves that America has finally reached the peak of absurdity under Trump, because that's the
UFC
fake fighting in the White House lawn, and it's of course to celebrate Trump's birthday because no one wants to celebrate with him. He's he had his military parade, nobody attended, and now he wanted to have the great 250 state fair and have all these singing groups, and nobody wanted to sing at an event that he was sponsoring. So he said nobody wants to hear them sing anyway. They're all has-been. So we just won't have it at all. And here he likes the way that this particular audience receives him. This is MAGA Christian knuckleheads that like violence.
These are the 37%.
Yeah, this is the 37%. This is the fun of the 37%. I remember back in the day, and I had this knucklehead who was a conspiratorialist that would chime in on our shows, and this was what he loved. He loved this sport where people were beating. He was essentially an invalid, so he couldn't participate, but he loved people beating each other up. I don't find any enjoyment. This is not. I have never watched one of these. I will never watch one of them. I think there's something sick about watching one of them. I'm disgusted that it's popular. And that's what's going to be in the front of the White House. If it, say we're going to do something really elegant and we're, going to do figure skating, it's going to be really beautiful, or there's going to have a gymnastic competition.
Okay.
And because I think they are so enormously talented,
Then you'd
Olympic
pick a gladiator sport.
Gymnasts. But pick a gladiatorial sport. Going back to ancient Rome, no, it doesn't appeal to me. I think it's disgusting that the country finds it appealing, frankly.
I just think that they're wrong because they ain't seen nothing yet. You think this is peak absurdity? We still got
my point.
This, yeah.
Oh yes,
so
I know.
much further.
Absurd, yes. The pinnacle, hell no. No,
Yeah.
Age match at the White House.
Yeah. So no, this is not the peak of what he's going to do. He's still getting warmed up.
Yeah.
It just
We'll go
it
another
makes
one.
you yearn
Just
for
an
the days of
opening
the
act.
Lincoln bedroom, right? It makes you yearn
Yeah.
for the days of the Lincoln bedroom. That was the worst scandal that there was.
I was a huge opponent of Obama because he was a Marxist and he was incompetent. He had nothing to offer other than he was a smooth talker. But otherwise, he had nothing to offer. And I accused the Democrat Party of putting a man that was mentally incompetent up to run for office, like it was a weekend at Bernie's with the Biden administration. But by comparison, oh my God, they're infinitely superior to this nonsense. Now, would
Somebody
Cackles have
is
made a
gonna-
better president? I don't know, but geesh.
Yeah.
Oh goodness, these AI programs like this that try to appeal to, oh my God, it's always shock value, and it's
Right.
all AI. The spokesperson is AI, the text is AI, the voice is AI, and they're presenting it for clicks because if on social media you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a month if you're popular. And so now this person wants to say, "Oh, China's next. We're going to have war with China. Look at all of that war material there. I'm here to tell you, yeah, we're going to have war with China. They're next." No, China's not next. China is never. The opportunity for America to be stupid enough to go after 1 billion Chinese ended a very, very long time ago. And it is never going to happen. I don't think America could have beaten the Chinese even during the end of World War II, where we're the only ones that had nuclear bombs, because with that many people, they could suffer any number of blows, and we didn't have enough bombs. So no, I don't think there was ever a time that we could have gone against China. And now, America goes against China, it would be annihilated. So no, no. And plus the fact it's Cuba that's next, and Ukraine and Iran are not over, and they're not even close to being over.
No.
So how can you have next in China if you can't resolve Ukraine and Iran, and they can't, and he wants Cuba to be next? He needs a win, and he thinks he can beat Cuba.
Yeah.
Well, I've been seeing people talk about how the slow death of the Iran situation, the big kicker, it hasn't even hit yet because we're still working on stockpiles, of what was stockpiled in oil and stuff. If Iran doesn't open by this fall, I mean, people start starving this winter, just because there's no fuel
fertilizer to grow crops and no oil to run economies and to distribute food. Whew. Yeah, it's going to be a mess. Yeah, Satan was not good for the world. Who knew?
No.
Go figure.
Yerma Yasha Dode knew. There was
Gabriel and Michael knew. 2,600 years ago, they knew.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a good place for us probably to end. You know what that is that's burning there?
St. Petersburg.
That's St. Petersburg. The European capitals went and supported Ukraine, probably the CIA, but certainly MI6. Germany, France, and the UK, along with the Balkan countries that were one time part of the Soviet Union, they colluded with Ukraine to create these drones and the plan to attack Russia in a completely civilian, non-military setting when they knew Putin would be there with a conference that was important internationally to Russia. And this is very much like the Muslims leaving Gaza to torment Jews, knowing what's going to happen. At this point, you do this, and they have now done it. That image right there is never going to go away. That picture we're looking at right there changes the world.
It does. They humiliated
I just want
Putin
the gravity
with
of that to sink in. There is no turning back the clock from that image. The consequence of having done that now absolutely assures the complete obliteration of Kyiv. No respect for anything in Kyiv. The Russians are not going to sacrifice 1 million men to take Kyiv. They're going to destroy it. And if they can't do it with conventional weapons, they'll do it with nuclear weapons.
Mhm.
And they will hold the European countries that prompted them to do this accountable. And it's no longer a question. It's no longer of how many red lines must they cross before Putin finally responds, because what they've done is they've crossed every red line and done everything he told them not to do, and he's done nothing. I don't think that's possible anymore, boys and girls. This was an act that will cause World War III. So
Sooner rather than later. I think we're
how
going
do
to
you
get
like
there
them
before.
apples?
Yeah.
We have 7 years left. We're in the time of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you would expect. Although it'd be hard for anybody to say, oh boy, that's, we're going to start the week of the time of troubles. Within the first week, we're going to have the Europeans and Ukrainians start World War III with Russia, while the United States is in the midst of World War III with Iran. And while the United States betrays Israel and curses Israel out. All those things we knew were going to happen. But you think that all happened in a week of the time of trouble?
Right.
Yeah.
Talk about being upset with the insights stacking up, the insights coming out of yada yada, being
Mhm.
exponential. The speed at which things are falling apart is quickly reaching,
Everything's speeding up
peak
for sure.
peak entropy.
Yeah,
Everything
doubt.
is
You know
just
what
flying
is
off.
plays a confidence and credibility game, right? He's not very imposing. He's going to get to be imposing by the time we get to the end of the time of Israel's troubles, and even in the last 3.5 years, he's going to leave no doubt as to who he is and who he's speaking through. But for the most part, he trades on credibility and confidence, right? That's his stock and trade. If you were to listen to what I've had to say over the last 25 years, and I've said a lot, and what I've written over the last 25 years, huge percentage of it, almost all of it, has been accurate and come true. And when you have one thing after another materialize, after a while, you ought to be listening. And you go back just to the last series of wars and the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq. I was the lone voice saying, you're making a bad situation worse. There is no chance whatsoever that this is going to prevail. And let me tell you all the reasons this will fail. I was the only one. And I didn't do it quietly. I did it on up to 10,000 radio shows around the world on English-speaking channels and wrote books about it. Well, you read Time of Trouble. I've told you this was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. It's credibility. That's what, as I say, it's God's stock and trade is credibility.
Absolutely.
And part of credibility is the other thing that it's not just that he's right about our future and tells us about it so that we can communicate tomorrow's news today. It is also consistency. And that means you do it. Who's been doing this for 25 years? I mean, there's none of these people that are voices on internet shows that have 25 years and 40 books into the process. But we do.
That's right.
This is the start of World War III. Well, it was actually maneuvered into this position back into the 1950s and then hugely exacerbated by George Bush with the NATO expansion into Ukraine. And then with the Obama administration and John McCain and Lindsey Graham with the overthrow of the Ukrainian government, and then the arming of the Nazi forces within Ukraine to bludgeon ethnic Russians in the eastern part of Ukraine that forced the Russians to respond. We've been aiming for this for a long time.
Yeah.
But this is the final straw here.
Yeah.
I think this will be the picture that that people will be able to look back on as 9/11. You have the towers and the smoke coming out. Just like the Trump with holding up his fit. There are pictures that define
an
that once you see
iconic
them,
picture,
that the whole story comes back. I think this will be that picture.
Yeah, if you look at the pictures from 9/11, there was nothing that was this massive in terms of of destruction and a plume. It wasn't this massive.
Yeah.
This is massive. And it's not just massive. I've been in 170 countries around the world. St. Petersburg is one of the most spectacular cities in the world. And it is a non-military city. And it's a city with some of the greatest museums and art collections in the world. And it was at the site of Russia's conference, an economic conference. And to pick that city at this time This is really shows just how stupid the leaders of Europe and Mr. Cokehead himself, Zelensky, is.
Yeah, this was meant
This
to
is
embarrass Putin,
that is
and
correct.
they really did that. He was hosting. What was he hosting? He was hosting something there.
Well, it's his annual
entertaining.
economic conference, and it was hosted by Putin, and it's the single most important conference every year in Russia. This is
So
central
this is
to
Western
the
Europe's best thinking as to how to manage this war was to pull something like that because Kiev doesn't operate in a vacuum. They're clearly
no,
getting their marching orders from Germany or whoever.
correct, and
But
funding and weapons
exactly, yes.
and guidance
Well,
for those
MI
weapons.
there are two different wars being fought in the same place. I mean, MI6 has completely been about the make Putin look bad war. I mean, they're not winning. They're not winning anything in Ukraine. They're losing ground. All they can do is strikes that make headlines and that they can take some propaganda out of. Okay,
Yeah.
Putin, as Yada said several times, yeah, I'll take this one. Yeah, I'll take the hit on the boat in Crimea. Yeah, you can have your propaganda, but militarily, they're not doing anything to hurt Russia. They just look bad.
No,
And
no.
so as soon as
You know,
we
they
start,
struck Russia's nuclear deterrence. I mean, America was the one that provided the intelligence, and they sent drones to attack Russia's nuclear bombers,
Remember that?
which were
Yeah,
which
yeah,
were which were parked out in the open
yeah.
in known
They were covered under
locations
a
because that
treaty.
was part of the accords the SALT accords that were signed specifically so that we knew and they knew where our strategic bombers were. They would always be parked out in the open. They were out in the open and they were attacked. And it was the CIA that provided the guidance and the know-how to carry off that attack. I mean,
Which
you
was a
couldn't
war
have
crime.
a more
Yeah.
ruthlessly stupid violation because the protocols of Russia's protocols, if their strategic nuclear deterrence is attacked, they launch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you couldn't have been dumber than that, and this may be
yeah,
to take the economic conference in the city in Russia. I mean, this is Russia's showcase city. I've been to Moscow many times, but every time that I go to Russia, I always go to St. Petersburg. It is a magnificent city. It is so much more beautiful than any American city. It is really a jewel. And to do that is just such a crying shame. That's so unbelievably stupid. And the thing that's even worse is that you poll Americans, and 80% of Americans think that Putin is the enemy and that Putin is the aggressor in Ukraine and that the Ukrainians are the freedom fighters. Nothing could be further from the truth, and it's overwhelmingly so. It's the amount of evidence that you have to deny to come to support the lie is literally overwhelming.
Yeah.
It just shows that you're not thinking, you're not capable of processing information, you cannot do research, you are incapable of making a reasoned decision. And yet it's prolific that 80% of Americans think that the belligerent is Putin and not America, when the opposite is true. And as I've said, and I've been saying this now for, well, it goes back 15 years, back to the Shattering Myths radio show, that when the West tried to overthrow the Ukrainian government to make it pro-West as opposed to pro-Russian, and then they tried to move the Russian monetary support of Ukraine out of the way because Ukraine is a graft-ridden country. It does not function without outside funding. And they wanted to replace it with the International Monetary Fund controlled by the U.S. And I remember doing the shows and I said, let me tell you where this is going to lead. The Russians have a way of taking this next $3 billion tranche and getting it repaid because they're running pipelines through Ukraine and they can take it out of the transit tolls. The United States has nothing, and Ukraine is always going to be a bankrupt state. And so it's another $3 billion gone, and then another $3 billion gone for what? To move NATO into a country that's a stone's throw from Moscow? What all you're doing here is igniting the next world war. Why are you doing this? And I was talking about that 15 years ago. And now here it is. This is where it led. And the sad thing about this is that there was no chance of success. The mission was to break up Russia so that the military industrial complex and bankers in America and the UK could prosper by robbing Russia of its mineral wealth. That was the entire ploy. That's the same ploy as in Iran, same ploy as in Venezuela. That is the ploy. And my point was, if you study the Russian psychic and mentality, just like the Persians and Iran, you know that's not going to happen. There is nothing you're going to do that's going to cause that to happen. And that if you could prevail and cause that to happen, the response is going to be the dead hand. They will destroy you with their nuclear assault. They will not go down without destroying you. And the same thing is true with Iran. They were not going to go down without destroying their adversaries. And they have. And Russia will. And so there was no chance of prevailing, and the very real chance of destroying the world, all for a buck. I mean, you could be the richest guy in the world. You could be like any one of these hundreds of billions of dollars oligarchs, but where are you going to spend your money? In hell? Because you burnt down the planet? And, I've been talking about that now for 15 years. Oh, that's the iconic image right there.
Yep.
The world changed at that very moment. And if I were in a European capital or lived near a European weapons manufacturing plant, I'd move.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm glad we got to that image. It's been a lot to talk about. This has been really an interesting vlog on the vlog. Will, I'm glad you were able to come in.
Yeah.
I always love to have you. And Kevin, great job. I really do appreciate the fact that you're doing so many things during your day, and yet you did take the time on every one of these images to read what was behind them and why I chose them to comment on them. And it's extraordinary. I appreciate you doing it.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. We'll
Thank you, guys.
talk again tomorrow.
Yep.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch y'all on our next podcast.